Welcome to the League of Women Voters of Chicago's Zooming with the Aldermen series of interviews. My name is Betty Magnus. The League was founded 101 years ago right here in Chicago and is a nonpartisan political organization which encourages the informed and active participation of citizens in government. We work to increase understanding of major public policy issues and influences public policy through education and advocacy. The Chicago League is one of hundreds of local leagues all across the country. These interviews with the aldermen are part of our efforts to educate people about those who represent us in setting the policies and ordinances that govern us here in Chicago. Today, our guest is Alderman Patrick Thompson of the 11th Ward. Welcome, Alderman Thompson. We appreciate you taking the time to be with us. Please know that this Zoom session is being recorded and will be available for viewing after today on the League website. We'll be sending you, Alderman Thompson, and everyone who registered for this program who is not a member, a link to the video when it becomes available. Also, everyone should know that we have provided the aldermen a copy of the questions I'll be asking ahead of time. Before starting on those questions, we want to show you a map of the 50 wards in Chicago. The cursor will show you the location of the 11th ward. Here we are. Pretty big. Quite a few expressways there connecting around you.
We do.
Now let's get started. Please describe your ward, Alderman Thompson, where it is and what are the main boundaries and what neighborhoods does it include and what is the makeup of the ward? Is it residential, commercial, industrial?
Sure. Thank you, Betty, and thank you, Chris, for inviting me. And I appreciate the opportunity to come. I always love to brag about the ward and what we have going on. And so anytime there's an opportunity, we want to do that. You showed the map and of the different wards in the city, and our ward, the 11th ward, is a very diverse ward. Mayor Emanuel used to talk about Chicago being the most American of American cities, and we talk about how our ward is the most American of American wards. So at the north end, it's Harrison Street. Harrison, the area around UIC is at the north border, and then it comes down. So we've got University Village, University Commons. Coming south, we have a part of Pilsen, the east part of Pilsen. And then when you come across the river at Archer, it is the bulk of the ward is we call the ABCs, Armour Park, Bridgeport, and Canaryville. So you've got those three communities that are a large part, and that has really been, the boundaries. That area of the ward has historically been part of the 11th ward for, probably close to 100 years, and so it's an honor to represent all of these communities. Having grown up in this community in Bridgeport, I went to school at high school at St. Ignatius. And so now I represent the area all around. I don't represent the school. I don't think the Jesuits would allow that, but I represent the area around there, and really to see how that area has transformed is it's fantastic. And the makeup is, it's a bedroom community. We've got a lot of families, home ownership we really focus on. And so we've got a lot of families who are third second, fourth generation that have been here. We also have a lot of new families that have come, whether they're coming from the South Loop or up north. They come down here because they know it's a safe neighborhood with good schools, and the real estate pricing is much more reasonable compared to some of the hot markets up on the north side, and they get that quality community that I think many people are looking for. We also have a lot of new immigrants. It's always been sort of a port. Bridgeport has been a port for people. Right now, the wave predominantly is Chinese that have come in. As Chinatown expands, it expanded many years ago into Bridgeport. Now it's going further down Archer to McKinley, Brighton Park, and all the way down towards Midway. So racially, it's a diverse community. It's a majority minority ward with Chinese and Hispanic, each representing roughly a third, little under a third. And then Caucasian is about a little more than a third. And then we have, when we picked up that University Village community, we diversified more on race with more African-American voters. And of course, that part of Pilsen has, that East Pilsen still has a lot of families that have grown up, their generational families who are Mexican, Hispanic, but predominantly Mexican. The Southwest, the Southwest, and I'll be done, Betty. The Southwest corner of our ward is industrial. So it's the stockyards, which was, many know Chicago, that helped grow Chicago as the epicenter for the livestock industry. It's been transformed into a industrial park. There's 15, 20,000 people that continue to come here every day to go to work. There's many food industries that are still in the stockyard, the meat companies, but then there's other companies like the not actually meat, but the synthetic meat, I guess you'd say, which is pretty ironic that they're in the stockyards. And there's a lot of other businesses and industries that are in the stockyards, which create job opportunities for many of our neighbors to be able to walk or ride their bikes to work. And so we're really happy to have that sort of mix between. And then our commercial corridor, I'm sorry, finally, my plug here, on Halsted Street, which runs from the north to the south, that's our commercial spine. We see redevelopment happening. We see it Maxwell up north in University Village. We just added a Starbucks there. As you come down, Pilsen is seeing a transformation, some new restaurants, and the art galleries, of course, along Halsted Street there. And then with the police station that was built at 31st and Halsted about 10 years ago, we finally developed the corner next to it. We have a new AT&T and Starbucks store. We've got the Ramova Theater that's moving forward to closing next month. And we look forward to that redevelopment as a live entertainment venue, predominantly music. And I think that's going to be a great catalyst. And at 39th Street, we have a new Lakeside Bank branch that just opened. And then down into Canaryville, we've got industry continuing to grow and expand. So we've seen a lot of development. We've been very fortunate. A lot of the housing stock has been affordable, not only defined as affordable, but also moderately priced, and so it offers a variety. And I'm real conscious of that. We've done some townhome developments, make it a little more affordable for some of our younger families to start out and be able to stay in the community. And so that's I could go on and on, Betty, but I'm done.
Yeah, you're pretty diverse ward there. They've got a little bit of everything for everybody. What are a few key issues facing the people in your ward that you would say? So
number one is public safety. That by far is our number one concern, not only in my ward, I think in all 50 wards in the city of Chicago. So if people don't feel safe, they're not going to stay. And so we really work on trying to make sure that I have a very active CAPS program, and our CAPS coordinators, I thank them. They're community activists who come out and make sure that we bring our neighbors out. Well, as we always say, when we see something, we say something. And the CAPS officers, the program at the 9th district, as well as at the 12th district that represent us. We've got a little piece of one, but those are the 2 police districts. And it's very vibrant and very active. So public safety is number 1. If it's safe, but we don't have good schools, we're going to lose young people. It's just going to atrophy. So we really push for making sure our schools, we work closely with all of our principals. So we've got great public and private schools. Predominantly on the private side, it's Catholic schools. And we offer a great education. And we see a lot of young families moving in because of that. And you know, we really need to focus on a new high school. We've got Tilden, and the principal there is doing a fantastic job. But I think we really need, we were close a couple of years ago on getting a new high school, and CPS decided to take a different turn. So we're still working on trying to create another public high school option for our kids.
When did you first join the city council?
So I was elected to the city council in 2015. And so, and then stood for re-election in 2019. And and then prior to that, I was a commissioner at the Water Reclamation District in 2012. So.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yes.
Do you have any other employment other than being a councilman?
I am. I'm a lawyer. Is
okay.
My background, and so I continue to practice law. Obviously, there's restrictions on what we can and can't do, and I've supported a lot of the ethics reforms to make sure that there's a clear line. And I always err on the side of the caution on that. I will say, Betty, that I think having that outside employment and having that outside perspective helps me, I think, to be a better alderman, because understanding business, understanding how that operates and works and decision making, as well as seeing what other communities are doing in my private law practice out in the suburban and downstate communities and how they operate. I bring a lot of those skills back and try to help my community here in the city of Chicago.
What, if any, changes would you like to see made in the operation of the council?
So in 2019, I had introduced an ordinance, a rules change that we have half of our meetings in the evening. And the reason I did that was, I practice law, as I said, and I'm in suburban communities, and those meetings are all in the evening. Most of those council members or trustees all work other jobs during the day, and then they come at night and do their sort of civic side. Granted, I know the city of Chicago, our structure is different and it's much more demanding. Even though it's a part-time position, it's a full-time job. But I thought it would make it more accessible, because a lot of people can't get over to City Hall at 10 o'clock for a zoning hearing or a committee hearing. And I thought by having it in the evenings, that would help. I know everyone's busy. I had one last night, a community meeting until almost 7 o'clock. And my colleagues all have those. And so there was some concern, that would interfere with those evenings that are already being filled with community meetings. But I'd like to see more participation. And just as a side, with the pandemic, it's interesting, with now allowing Zoom meetings, we've seen more participation, because oftentimes people, especially even when I have my own community meetings, you're at night, the husband and wife, they have kids, they have to put them to bed, they have to help them with homework. They can't necessarily run out for a 6 o'clock community meeting. They could Zoom in from the kitchen. And so we've seen that, and we'll see if that stays. I know there's some of my colleagues that would like to keep this flexibility. So, what
city council committees are you on, and do you chair any or vice chair any of them?
I am not a chair or a vice chair of any committees. The biggest committee, finance committee. I'm on the budget committee, ethics and oversight, public safety, and transportation, public way, and workforce development are the committees that I'm on. So we added a couple of committees with when Mayor Lightfoot came in. We created some new committees, and that increased our committee assignments. So we've added a few, but there's a certain pattern here where it's the finance side and public safety are the two key for me.
Your kind of key concerns. The league has long supported having an independent commission draw ward boundaries rather than the aldermen determining them. Would you support the concept of creating an independent commission to draw the next set of ward boundaries? And if so, what are some of the key elements you would want to see incorporated into such a concept?
Yeah, so we're just starting that process. Well, we have been for the last year promoting the census and trying to get our neighbors to come out. I think unfortunately, perhaps at the federal level, there were some tactics taken to deter participation. I know in my community, which, as I mentioned, I have a majority minority ward, many of whom are new immigrants or newly immigrated to the United States and came to Chicago. Many are very concerned about the federal government, especially in the past administration at the federal level. So we didn't have the participation that we were hoping for. We know there are undercounts, so it's not an accurate reflection. So, if you just go by the numbers that were counted in the census, it's going to look like, obviously at the congressional level, we lost a congressional seat because there's a strict interpretation. So we're working on trying to actually get a more accurate read as to how many people are in the city, because the census wasn't necessarily that accurate. That being said, when we go to redraw boundaries, and I appreciate the league's participation and interest in creating a independent commission. I think oftentimes we get sort of caught up in the politics, and it's always Republicans and Democrats and who's drawing the district and who's going to have more control of the House or the Senate in Illinois, or who's going to have the congression. The city of Chicago, aldermen run as a nonpartisan. It's always been nonpartisan. For a period of time, the mayor, the clerk, and the treasurer ran in a partisan election. That was changed a few decades ago. So we're all nonpartisan. So there isn't really that same sort of politics on drawn maps. I do think that the aldermen are the ones, we're the representatives who are closest to the people in closest to the communities. So to have our input and our involvement, I think is critical. We know communities, and you see some of these districts, ward boundaries that the line goes right down and separates two communities. And so I don't think that's necessarily good. I think you need to have sort of a cohesive communities. And I think it's important that the aldermen be involved in that. So I support us, the city council, continuing to have a say on the boundaries, because again, we know the communities, we're elected. I think in today's politics, there's oftentimes people are talking about the aldermen as though like we're disconnected from our communities. I think all of us are very much in tune, and I think it's important that we be a part of that.
Okay, having said that, then you would not be in support of an independent commission?
Right. I think that the way the city council, without understanding what the commission is and without understanding that makeup, I think, again, those independent commissions are great when you're dealing with partisan, to eliminate the partisan politics. We don't have that at the city council. Ours is really trying to make sure that the communities are intact, that we have accurate representation. So I don't know what the commission would look like. And it's going to sound like a lawyer response, but I don't know. I don't know. I haven't seen anything, but I do know how important it is. And I haven't gone through this. So when I was elected in 2015, that map was already done by my predecessor. So it's new to me, but I can tell you as a sort of a rookie, I think it's so important for us to be able to have an influence on where the communities are. And I think our community, Betty, in the 11th ward, based on the numbers, even though they're down, we're still up. I mean, our community is up 10 to 15% in population. We've done a lot of good things here and attracted a lot of people and development. So we're probably going to have to shrink in some areas. And so I know the communities. So I think I have to be very integral in that decision making.
Currently, when one candidate for mayor or alderman does not receive at least 50% plus one in the February election, the top two vote getters are on the ballot in what's called a runoff of election in April. What is your view about using ranked choice voting in February to determine the winner in lieu of the runoff? Attached, you might have seen that, an explanation of how that could work. What do you think about that?
Well, having gone through a runoff in my 2015 aldermanic race, I'm very familiar how that works. I think that structure works. The ranking, I'm still, I don't know enough about it, to be honest. I know they were trying to, I think, on the East Coast. I think that it gets difficult, it gets confusing, and I'm just not all that familiar. I do know that there is a cost of an election, and we're very familiar. That's one of the reasons why we went to a nonpartisan for the mayoral, the treasurer, and the clerk. But I think it works. I mean, I don't know. We have to look and see what's the reasoning for that. It would have to be what is the cost? How does that all work? And then weigh the cost benefit. I mean, I think people really are out to make a choice. And then when you reduce it down to two people, if there's multiple candidates, then you're going to hear both candidates get out and talk about their platforms, talk about what they want to do, talk about their vision for the community, and in my case, in the ward, and then make an educated decision based on those two people. And I think it becomes a little more challenging if you're doing that ranking, because it's hard enough to get people to participate in voting, especially on a local election. And then to say, okay, you've got to go study 8 candidates and then rank them, or 6 it's I just don't know enough about it. But I think that the way we do it now works. I don't think there's that big of an expense.
Looks like you knocked your video off. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
No problem. Would you be willing to allow applicable departments to make decisions on some of the items that now require ordinances, as long as your office and any alderman office is located within a specified distance, if applicable, was consulted? For example, parking prohibited designations, loading and standing zones, residential permits, parking zones, traffic warning signs or signals, and grants of privilege, in the public way.
Right.
Would you be willing to let them do it without an
ordinance? I'm always open to looking at how we could be more efficient, how we can streamline decision making. So I'm always open to those ideas. I don't think there's this power or fiefdom of aldermen, and so I think. However, that being said, we again know the community. We know what's going on, and to have somebody from Uptown or Saguenash make a decision about Canaryville, and they have no idea. But I don't know. I don't think a bureaucrat at City Hall is going to make a better decision than me, because I engage with my community. I'm out all the time talking to them. So I think they have, you know, to streamline it. Okay, but how is that process? Ultimately, somebody has to make a decision, and who is it? And so I think that's what we have to look at is, you know, some of these perfunctories I don't have a problem with. But, you know, when we're making more impactful on the day-to-day life impacts, I think you have to have local decision authority.
Okay, if the league wanted to support one of your initiatives, what steps would you recommend the league take to support you?
I believe even with all this technology, the power of the spoken word. We'd sit down and have a conversation. I could lay out what it is that I'm proposing, what I'm talking about. Listen and get feedback first and foremost from you to see maybe I missed something. I know I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, so I'm always open to listening to other people who are smarter and have a different perspective. And I think that's what's important is first and foremost is listening to other perspectives, and then working together to try to build a consensus. We have much more in common, all of us, than we do differences. And I think that we need to focus on the commonality and what we have and work towards achieving real meaningful solutions, because we've got big problems right now in the city. I mean, obviously the finances are a big concern. Pre-pandemic, we had concerns with, you know, we've got a big pension obligation, and you know, continuing cost of running government and continuing our education in our schools. So we've got financial issues. We've got obviously an uptick in violent crime, which is something we need to address. And the criminals are younger and younger. And so we have to do something different, and we have to get out there and work together to try to address those. So I think listening and collaborating would be what I would suggest I would do, and reach out to you.
What are several things you'd like to get done or at least started during the remainder of your term, which at this point ends in 2023?
Sure. So we've started a lot. I mentioned some of the projects on Halsted Street that we have. The Remova Theater is critical, and continuing to revitalize our commercial corridor. We have just completed a big expansion, renovation rather, of McGuane Park, and we're starting a big expansion of Donovan Park. So I would like to see that come into fruition at Donovan. So those are two big. We also have trying to put our first dog park in on Halsted Street, so we're working on that. And then I'd like to. I had introduced an ordinance last year during budget season for a delivery tax. We may need some help in Springfield, and I'm trying to get work with the mayor's office to get that done. And I think that's a great initiative based on the e-commerce and where things are going that will generate hundreds of millions of dollars for the city of Chicago and help us offset our costs, so we're not burdening the property owners and taxpayers that live in the city.
What do you mean by delivery tax?
So it's a delivery tax on per delivery on packages. The consumer pays it, so we're not burdening, or not. I shouldn't say burdening, but it's taxing the consumer. So if I order in my house, for example, whether it be Amazon or some other delivery, for every delivery that comes, it's the same as what you would pay to get in an Uber. So it's the same fee, $1.25 per transaction. And you know, it was a initiative that I discussed last budget season, and it's something I'm continuing to pursue.
So if I bought a package, ordered a package from Amazon, then I would pay $1.25 on that one delivery, and every time I got a delivery, I pay $1.25. Is that what that is?
Yep. Yes. And so, I know some people thought, oh my gosh, that, one of my colleagues said, well, my neighbor gets like 4 deliveries a week. I said, God bless your neighbor that they can afford to buy, they're buying stuff on e-commerce 4 days a week, because here's what happens. The trucks that are delivering that, whether it be UPS, FedEx, or Amazon, or Sprint, or whoever it is, they're using our roads. They're delivering those packages. You as the consumer aren't going to the local store. You're not necessarily shopping local. Oftentimes you're not paying the city portion of the sales tax, so the city isn't receiving any money, and we're losing our bricks and mortar stores. And so it's not a fair sort of playing field. The e-commerce have big warehouses out in the middle of nowhere where the taxes are less. They're not paying tax to the city of Chicago. And yet we have stores, and we see all these retailers that are closing and shrinking. And that's also going to impact our property tax values going forward. So I think it's I worked with the UIC to weigh in, and I think I believe in it. I think it's a good idea. I know there was some concern with some of the folks in the law department. And so we continue to work to try to get that done.
But you don't think that putting that cost on the seller rather than the buyer, for example?
We're prohibited, Betty, but there's federal law that preempts us from taxing the seller per se. I mean, the seller has to bill and collect it, and so they'll pass that through.
And they even if pass it on to us. So.
Correct. And so this is theoretically it's a pass through ultimately to the consumer. But I think most consumers you talk to and say, well, look, if I could speak in my house with my my family and the number of packages that come to my house every week. I don't have a problem. I think there should be a cost to that, because we police and plow, we pave and light the streets that these delivery trucks come in, and there's no remuneration coming back to the city of Chicago on many of these deliveries, because there's no city sales tax being charged or collected. I know, it was an initiative I started last year. I think New York City took that idea. Imitation is the greatest form of flattery, and they're moving forward with trying to do something. So we're sort of stalled, but that's something I'd like to get done, because I do see that as the future of where retail is going.
Alderman Thompson, thank you so much for being with us today. And I hope you have enjoyed sharing with us as much as we've enjoyed hearing the things that you're doing. Just as a reminder to everyone watching, a link to this program will be found on the Chicago League's website, and everyone who registered for today's program who is not a League member will receive an email with a link along with an invitation to join the League, as well as sign up for notices for future programs. Next week, the next week interviews will be on June 10th. That's a few weeks from now at 6 p.m. And we'll be featuring Zooming with the Aldermen program will feature Susan Garza of the 10th Ward. So I hope that you all of you who are watching will join us again. And again, Alderman Thompson, thank you so much. It was good seeing you again. We haven't talked in a long time. And this was a great conversation. Thank you so very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Betty. And thank you to Chris and the League of Women Voters for allowing me to talk about and brag about the 11th Ward. Thank you.
You're quite welcome.